Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron again. I originally started this series of programs in July 5th to help out people, the fiscal conservatives in town from all different parties and affiliations, Democrats, unaffiliated, Republicans. I'm an unaffiliated person and have a lot of business experience, and a lot of people think I can be of help to the town. Some people think I'm a pain in the neck, but that's the way it goes. So here I am doing the fourth program because 3 budget referendums have been turned down, I think, for very good reasons. So I'm going to be talking again tonight about referendum number 4. First, I want to say a few words to make it very clear to you that the fiscal conservatives now are pretty well organized and pretty well working together to get some sense into the spending and balancing of the budget in town, and they're across all party lines, all affiliations. Some of them don't belong to any parties at all, and they're working together well. They don't always agree on everything. They don't always have the same solutions to the problem, but they all know that we have a problem and that we're trying to address it, and we're not ducking the issue here. So when we started in around July 5th or so, we had the possibility of a tax increase of 8.4% plus 21%. And the 8.4% would have been compounded by the 21%. So you were talking about roughly a 30% tax increase. Now, anybody who says they want a 30% tax increase that they will have every year for the next 5 years at least until the next reval, then you got to question that. There aren't too many people that I see. I haven't heard one person yet say they want a 30% tax increase. Not one person. Now, some people who say we need the tax increase, they don't want it either, but they're trapped. They came in on a certain agenda, and they kind of were voted in by a segment of the population here, of the voters, that could vote and were eligible to vote for the selectmen and the Board of Education, and they're trying to please them and give them what they promised. On the other hand, there was a whole group of the population, namely people that own property but aren't permanent residents in town and can't vote on the selectmen and Board of Education issues. They're in another camp, and they're supporting the fiscal conservatives because they know that we have this problem, and the fiscal conservatives that we do have on the Board of Selectmen, they happen to be Republicans now. They ran on this kind of a platform, and I agree with them. So I'm trying to help them. Now, I couldn't get a word in edgewise with the rest of the 5 because we don't speak the same language. They speak Russian or some language like that, and I speak perhaps Swahili. When we talk, it goes in one ear and out the other. We can't understand each other because we have totally different backgrounds and experience. But the first thing I want to point out tonight is that you got to understand that nobody wants a 30% increase. Nobody, right? And especially when it's going to happen every year for 5 years. They're going to live with it every year for 5 years. They're going to have to pay that money. Plus, they might have to pay a little more if the budget goes up on top of it, which I don't think it would ever do if you went up 30%. Probably be pretty flat. Now, I also want to say that most of the digging for all this information over the last 6-7 months has been done by Democrats, fiscal conservative, or former Democratic fiscal conservatives, and this is not just the Republicans here. This is all kinds of people are chipping in on this, and I can name 7 or 8 of these Democrat or former Democrat fiscal conservatives, some of whom don't even live in the town. They're in the outskirts, but they think the same way, and they are involved in various activities around town. So let's make that very clear, because I do get feedback from people that think it's just a small minority of people who are against this 30%, and of course it isn't. It's a pretty high majority people, as you see in the referendums each time. Gets a little less in the winter referendums because most of the people who vote from the lake and from Winchester and from the town that don't live here in the winter, they don't usually do an absentee ballot, although there's a big push on this year to get them to do the absentee ballots and get them in for this referendum number 4. I'll be talking a bit about that tonight. Now, I want to say a couple other things that are a real problem here, as I've always said. Said it on July 5th, and I said it for 6 years ago, and I produced the green papers, and I've been looking at it. We have a revenue problem here. We don't have enough profitable, recurring, additional revenue. We aren't bringing in any factories. We're not providing any new jobs. Some of them are thinking of leaving town. We just had Verizon turn tail and run because they came here. They bought the Blimpie building there, or whatever it was called, and they got involved in cleaning it up. And then all of a sudden, for one reason or another, I don't know all the facts, they say, well, we're not going to come to Winston now. Well, that's not good for our town, because that word gets around. It spreads around. Outside of the town of Winchester, there's a grapevine, and there's the internet, and there's a real estate grapevine, and there's all kinds of, word gets around very, very quickly about these kind of things, and it doesn't help us. So understand that we really have a revenue problem here. We're not addressing the revenue problem. You never see it on an agenda for a selectman or finance board. Imagine a finance board has meetings and they don't even address the revenue from week to week, only around budget time. It's kind of silly. We have other things happening here that need the revenue. We got grants that aren't being worked on. We've got they're trying to get all that senior housing in. There's problems with that. It looks like that's delayed a year or so. That's unofficial. I heard that from people. We got the second part of the Main Street thing, which doesn't seem to be moving along because the paperwork wasn't done properly. From what I hear, was mentioned at the select meeting the other night, which I did attend. I usually don't go to them; they drive me crazy. But I did go to the town budget meeting, and there was a selectman before that. I do go to selectman meetings when I present papers. Otherwise, I try to stay out of there if I can. I have other things to do. I get up kind of early in the morning, so past my bedtime when they start arguing and fighting in the selectman meetings and the finance board meetings. But so let's make it clear: we really have a revenue problem here, and when we didn't do the development, which would have produced a lot of revenue, and it didn't happen for a lot of reasons, not just because of the town's reluctance, but also because of the recession and some problems all around everywhere. So that never happened. But the big sin there, of course, is that we didn't put anything in its place. We didn't have a backup. We don't have any other things working. There are no other things. So we've got a long background now of no revenue, profitable revenue growth. So all the taxes are placed upon the people who pay taxes in the town now. Now, as I always point out to you, Torrington's a little different than this. They've got East Main Street. They're bringing in big stores up there. They got growing up there on that end, and that's most of that are businesses that provide a lot of tax, profitable tax, recurring. It recurs every year. It's profitable. They also lost a few stores down on the Winston Road and things like that. But in balance, they have made the transition to the businesses, industry, and stores and all pay a higher percentage of the tax each year in that town than the property owners do. And we have a different configuration up here. They don't have many $1-million houses down in Torrington. They're up in Litchfield, Harlington, Goshen, other places. But there are some expensive houses there, but not many. So they have a whole different setup. They don't have a lake. They don't have a town of Winchester. So we're a different kettle of fish. But on the other hand, we still need the revenue. If we don't get the revenue, then we either got to go get it, which we don't seem to be doing at all. There's no attention paid to getting revenue that I can see. If it is, it's not visible. And I don't mean business as usual. Pizza joint here, pizza comes, pizza joint goes, nail polish comes, nail polish goes. That isn't what I'm talking about. What I'm trying to talk about is let's get some factories in, let's get some developments in, and let's perhaps get some large or even small stores. Let's get some industry down the corridor, the industrial corridor that we have between Winston and Torrington, all that kind of stuff. But that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. Because without this revenue, we are hamstrung. The town is hamstrung. Why would we be talking about 30%, roughly, if we weren't hamstrung? By the way, it's not 30 anymore because we got rid of the 8.4, so now we're down to about 21. And And that may not even be 21. There are rumors going around, talks going around. It might be a little less than that. We don't know. We don't have any facts. We don't deal with facts, so we'll talk a bit about that tonight too. But the people who have done looking at it, doing the studies, comparing it with other towns in Connecticut and elsewhere and all, think it's going to be pretty high. It's going to be more than most people are going to want to pay. And when I go around talking to people in town, on the lake, in Winchester and everywhere, which I do quite a bit of, and I'm always out doing something, I say, well, how about paying 10% more? Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. How about 8%? No, that's too much too. These are tough times. I talked to a guy today who sells insurance, and he saw him downtown in a store, and he said to me, Brian, I'm reduced by 30% in my income because of certain reasons in the business that he's in. People all over the place are hurting. They're really hurting. And I don't want to make this a negative program, but we have to face the facts. When you're a manager, if you're a select person or a finance board, you've got to deal with the facts. And you got to know what the problem is. You got to understand what the problem is, and then you got to enlist everybody you can in town, whether they're in fiscal conservatives, they're liberal, they're unaffiliated, Democrat, Republican, all that kind of. You got to enlist everybody's support. You got to be open. You got to be transparent. You got to build a team. And I often say to people, when I used to put up big systems in the computer business many years ago, when there were no PCs and things, I would go to a place like, say, China or Japan or somewhere, and I'd have to get a system up and running in a year, and the customer would say, here's the people, you got to do it. And I would say, well, what's their background? And then you'll be surprised to hear what some of their backgrounds were. But we all worked together. They learned a lot, and then when we were done a year later, I handed it all over to them, and they ran the airline, they ran the bank, they ran whatever it was, whatever system it was, government system, anywhere in the world, and we helped them and propped them up a little for a while, and then we moved out. So you have to work with what you got, and in this town, it's hard to work with what you got because everybody's always squabbling. And if you read the history books, which I've done, they go back, there's 200 years worth of history books there. They squabbles from day one. The people were in a church, they didn't like the other people, so they formed another church, and then they formed 2 more churches, and then they formed 4 churches, and it was always been, town meetings have been rough in this town from what I see in the history books for years and years and years. So we've got a real history here. It's kind of unique in a lot of ways, and then again, it's similar to other places in a lot of ways. But I always say, if you want to see a sensible, civilized, progressive, a board of selectmen, go down to Torrington to one of their meetings and watch the town council, city council down there, and you'll see them working together, behaving themselves. And I was sitting next to somebody in a selectmen meeting one night who went to a lot of those meetings, and the person said to me, well, you don't see this in Torrington. In Torrington, it's hard to tell who the Democrat is, who the Republican is, who the independent is, or whatever. So, and then I always say we have to embrace the taxpayers. The taxpayers own the town. And all of us are taxpayers that own any property. And we have to embrace each other. We have to help with it. So it can't be a war between the Democratic Party and the Taxpayer Association or the Republican Party and the taxpayers. You can't have that. It's got to be all working together to come up with a joint plan that everybody backs and everybody wants to see happen. So if we do that, then we can do wonders as a town. If we all work together, pull together, and try to rise above everything else. Personally, I don't think it's ever going to happen here, but that's what you need to happen if you want to avoid these kind of things. Now, I also saw a little thing in the blog this week which says if we only had 3% increase every year from taxes from the existing taxpayers, what a wonderful town we would be. Well, let me tell you, we have averaged over many years, excluding the last few years, 4% when I did my studies a few years ago. So I think 4 or 5 years ago, I studied the history, and the last 10 years then was about 4% average. Torrington average is about 5.5. But 3% is only inflation, so you're not going to get ahead by just getting 3% every year. You got to get this new, additional, profitable, recurring revenue, and you got to change your whole approach to this. Now, in the absence of that, it's enough about revenue now, because we're going to talk about this budget. But in the absence of that, You have no choice but to manage the expenditures. You have no choice. That's what everybody has to do. Any business has to do it. Any home has to do it, if they have any money. If they don't have any money, if they're on the dole, maybe they don't have to be as careful. But most people, of course, are not on the dole. Most people work for a living. They're having a hard time. I'm going to go through a little bit more of that later about how tough it is living in this environment right now. It's very, very difficult, and you have to realize that. And you can't just say, "Oh, they can pay more. They're all rich up there." Well, they're not all rich up there. There are a lot of people up there that have their life savings invested there. They're planning on using some of that for retirement. They're retired. They have families that they have to take care of them. Some of them need help in their families that they have to help with. The same in Winchester, same in Winsted. So you can't just flippantly say, they can afford to pay 30%. Like, I've actually heard the mayor say, they can afford to pay it. They ought to just pay the taxes. Well, that's not the way to go. You can't do that. So right now, the majority of our selectmen do not represent the taxpayers. They represent the Board of Education more than they do the taxpayers, and there's an imbalance there, and that's why you got this problem. So now I want to say a little bit about this before I go into the next slide I'm going to put up here, and that is that the people want to pay taxes. They don't have a problem with a reasonable amount of taxes if they see that it's being spent rationally. And a lot of the people who do have money, they wouldn't have money if they didn't watch their nickels, pennies, dimes, quarters, and dollars. So they're used to that, like these former founders of the town were. You see up there on the screen right now. They were always very conscious. They always tried, and I think they did pretty well for quite a few years there. But then all of a sudden, after the flood and all kind of factories started leaving, a railroad left, blah, 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 then we started getting into these kind of pickles we're in now. Then we had the greatest recession since the Great Depression here in '08, and we weren't prepared for it. And now we're hurting, and everybody's hurting. There's a lot of problems around here now financially. Whether we like it or not, we kind of have to address that. Now, I would address the problems by saying, let's try to address the problems in a way that the least amount of people lose their jobs and the least amount of people lose the least amount of their benefits. Now, you can do that. I'll give you one example of how that can be done. And everybody knows this. It's just a question of doing it. We got 5 or 6 unions in town. One of them is the strongest in the country, the teachers' union. But we need to get all together, and we need to say, let's have one insurance vendor. Or let's participate with other towns in buying our insurance. Or let's participate with other towns in the state in buying our insurance. So let's try to just get the price of all the insurances down. So there's a lot of things like that can be looked at that won't cost people a lot of benefits, but it will reduce our costs of these benefits. And then there might have to be a few exceptions here or there. And there are things there's hundreds of things you can do to try to keep the costs down and still keep the jobs and still keep the people getting the right benefits. So I don't think everybody's out to chop people's benefits. I know people are afraid of that. They see me on the street, they stop and they say, we're going to lose our benefits, we're going to lose our jobs, but that isn't really what the object here. The object here is to run more efficiently. Don't have to 1.5 superintendents of schools or whatever it is nowadays, and secretaries for both, and computers for both. Don't have 3 computer systems in town, have 1. Don't have 3 purchasing departments or whatever, have 1. It just goes on and on. Don't have too many empty schools. Or now the chairman of the Board of Education got up the other night and said, well, we don't have any empty schools. No, but we got 4 schools that are roughly half full. And Parkinson's law says that things expand to fit the space available, and that's what's happening in our school systems. Well, as they get more space because they have less children, then they figure other ways to use the space. And instead of saying, how can we economize here, and how can we take and do that? And I always ask people from all over, hey, you got 1.5 superintendents in your school system, and towns are much bigger than ours, 30,000 people, and they say, no, we've got 1 superintendent, not 2. So sooner or later, that whole Gilbert K through pre-K through 6 situation has to be rationalized, and we have to make sure that even though we might keep it the way it is, it's got to be run efficiently. And if it's not run efficiently, people aren't going to want to pay the taxes. If it's run efficiently, people will pay the taxes. But even if they pay the 3 or 4% a year, which they've been doing over the years, you're not likely to really improve the town because the state hasn't got much money now, and we're in bad times, and you don't have enough additional profitable recurring revenue. You're not getting these things into town, and you're on the brink of perhaps losing some that are here already, like we just lost the Verizon opportunity. So now I'm going to put up a slide because we're going for referendum number 5. It's another bad budget. I had a sign up in front of my house, which is going up again in a couple more days with some changes made to get the dates right and everything. But this is another bad budget. And the reason it's a bad budget is because, number one, it doesn't help efforts to reduce the possible 21%, more or less. It might be a little less than that. Could be 15%. Could be 12 or 13%. Increase because of the revaluation. Now you'll have a selectman like Althea C. Perez or whatever the initials are there. You have her say, "Well, you don't understand." She's in the newspaper. She says it in selectman meetings. You don't understand. We have to stick with the existing mill rate we have this year. Well, I can tell you right now, we do understand. You have to stick with the existing mill rate. We all know that. That's not. That'll be for this year's budget. But next year, the mill rate will go up because of the reval. So what you need to do this year is you need to plan for that. It's like I tell people outside, if you know your daughter or son is going to get married next year, you don't wait till next year to run around at the last minute and make the preparation. It might take a year to organize this wedding. That's one of the reasons why people take a year or two being engaged, so they can organize the wedding properly and their honeymoon and in their new house or in their apartment where they're going to rent or whatever. So we have to be the same way. And we should have been doing that months ago. We should not be waiting till this budget's approved, blah, blah, blah. We should be taking and looking and saying, well, look, we know that's coming down the road. We know it. We know it's going to be bad. It might not be 21%, but it's going to be bad. People aren't going to like it. They're going to vote the budgets down and give us zero budgets in the future. We're not going to be able to get increases if that happens for quite a few years. So let's start addressing it right now. That's not happening. It's not in this budget, so I call it a bad budget. It doesn't help efforts to reduce the possible reval 21%. And it's also a bad budget because it doesn't take money. For example, and I just give you this example. I know there's all reasons we can't do it, but let's assume we could close the school and save some money on it. Well, maybe we could take that money and tear down one of these old buildings we got on Main Street and begin the process of preparing the land over a few years to be able to sell it to somebody and get a business in town or something like that. So that's what we mean by a bad budget. If you're not investing in the future in your budget, if you're not putting anything in there, if 90% of your budget is just salaries and benefits, you're never going to get to that point. And we certainly are not having any luck getting outsiders to come in and do that. So I want to make it very clear. That's why I say it's a bad budget, because it does not have any investment in it for the future that I can see. There might be a penny or two in there, but that isn't going to do it. So I say on this tax increase, vote no again. That's the way I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote no again and encourage others to do the same thing for that very reason that I just stated. Now, the next referendum is on October 27th. By the way, they're already working to a zero budget. We'll have to monkey around with it a bit because it isn't the same zero budget we had last time around. But they're already working because that's in the charter. You have to work, and they don't always like to follow the charter. I see the other night at the selectmen meeting and at the town budget meeting, but we're supposed to be following the charter. I was on a charter revision commission, so I know the charter pretty well. But basically, we've got to follow the charter. We got to get down there on October 27th. We got to say no again. They'll still be working on a zero increase. They'll still be able to do what they did last year. They might have to cut back a little bit on on some areas to be able to afford the increases in salaries or benefits that they promised. We might have a little trouble in the benefit area, which will force us to look at it faster with the state or other towns, or even within our own town, get everybody on the same plan if possible. I'm not an expert on it, but that's the kind of thinking you have to have. It's called positive lateral system thinking. So that's very important. So Saturday, October 27th. Now, I say on the sign before you go, because what we really need here during the winter months is we need the people that aren't here in the winter to vote absentee ballot. That's very important, and you can do that several ways. One is you can get an absentee ballot from the town hall application, fill it out, give it back to them, get a ballot, fill it out. You can go down to town hall to do it. You can have them send it to you in the mail. That takes a few weeks, and I wouldn't advise that. I think that's and then there's ways you can get the application off the internet, the town website, and you can just call the town hall and ask them how to do that, and then you send that application in, and then they'll send you a ballot. But I would say to anybody who's within riding distance of this town should come here before October 27th. You can do it if you know you're going to be gone on October 27th. You can come here any day, starting in a few more days, and you can fill out an application and a ballot right there in the town clerk's office in the back room and hand it in. So I would encourage that, because that's the safest way to get your budget, your application in. If that doesn't work, your absentee ballot. If that doesn't work, then for you, because you can't get here between now and the date, then you have to either do it by mail. And if I were you there, I would send a certified into the town, so you get the return receipt requested, and that you do it fast mail if you can. I know it costs a little more, but you want to make sure your vote counts now, because the absentee ballots, in my view, will probably make the difference in this next vote. So if we can get people to vote absentee-wise, which usually probably they don't, then maybe we'll succeed here, and we'll be able to turn this budget down as well. And then, if not, the budget will go into effect. I won't have to do any more programs, and we'll all have to work on what we're going to do with the next budget. And the mayor's already said she expects the next budget next year to be a 0 increase. I think a lot of people are saying, hey, if we get a 21% increase, 15% increase, 18%, 13, 12, 10, we're going to want a decrease in the budget. And that's one of the reasons why the selectmen have to, and they've been told this, of course, by the Republicans, and there's been letters written about it. It's been over and over and over, but they got to start working on it now. They got to get in there and get the answers, because it takes a year or 2 years around here to do anything. So that's very important. Okay, now we may know more by referendum number 5. I said this last time around, and of course we don't know anymore, but we may know more by referendum number 5 as to exactly what the impact of the revaluation is going to be. We may know that. Or we may have a better inclination. Or the town might know it. There are rumors that the town has a rough idea right now, but they're not telling anybody. There was an email sent out to all the employees in the town saying, "Don't talk about it." And I understand that. We need somebody officially, the mayor or somebody, to say, "Hey, here's the kind of information we got, and I'm going to show you the other side of this sign, and it's going to basically say, hey, we don't think we got any more information yet, because it was good information. We might have it, but if it was good information, they would let us know about it." So we may know more about it before referendum 5. So that's another reason. December 1st is the latest we're supposed to get this information from Vision Appraisal as to exactly, and they start sending the letters out to everybody as to what the new valuations are. We should wait for that, because they don't have all the facts on the table now. And if we have all the facts on the table now, that'll wake everybody up, and they'll say, holy mackerel, we better get together and get this one insurance policy for everybody. We better get together and do this and do that, and whatever we can, get rid of a lot of redundancy in the school systems and a lot of the inefficiencies, which, of course, the chairwoman says we don't have, but everybody else knows we do have. So very, very hard to get that point across. And then she made an argument the other night about inflation over the last 5 years, really killing them by $1 million or so. Well, everybody's killed over the last 5 years by deflation. Everybody's houses are going down. They don't have the jobs. They're not making the same remuneration. They're paying more for gas, blah, blah, blah. So there's a big political argument going on there, and there shouldn't be. And I think once you get the financial information out about the reval, now if it turns out to be a zero increase, we'll all be happy. We'll have a big block party down on the green, and we'll all celebrate the fact that we're going to be in good shape. But that's not going to happen. I wouldn't put a nickel on it. I wouldn't bet you a dime that that's going to happen. So now you got the next sign. I guess if he still got it. And what I'm saying here is, if the reval was going to be good news, it was going to be good news, it would have got out already. Somebody would say, hey, look, let's pass this budget. The majority might have said, hey, come on, we know it isn't going to be as bad as this. It's going to, roughly be in this ballpark. And now we don't know for sure yet, because a lot of work still has to be done by vision appraisal. Once they do get you the stuff by December 1st, we'll have a pretty good idea by then what's going on. But then people can appeal for months, and they got to appeal to vision, then they can appeal to the town, then they can sue the state or whatever happens there. I don't know the whole procedure, but it will go right up on until and we won't know the final mill rate for next year till the day we have the town meeting. Middle of next year. That's 5-6 months away. So, or maybe a little more. So, but we will have a good idea. Just like we have a good idea now because of the people who did the research, and they were fiscally conservative Democrats who did most of this research to come up with the roughly 21%. And I always say roughly, might be less, might be more. And individually, it could be a lot more or a lot less. But on average, they're talking about a rough average of 21%. So we'll probably know, we probably know by now if we're going to be much better than that. We probably know. But I don't think they'd be happy to tell you it's going to be 13% either. So we're sticking with the 21% until we know for sure, because that's the safest way to do it. You should plan for the sort of worst case and then be happier than heck if it turns out not to be the worst case. Whatever we do is going to be good for the town anyway, so we all know that. And then, of course, you got to ramp up getting the revenue in. At least put it on the agenda and talk about it every couple of weeks. And then, if it looks like you're probably going to lose something like a Verizon, then you try to manage it and make sure you don't lose it. But we don't hear about it as residents and taxpayers until it's already gone, and that's not good. So vote no again. The initial reval facts should come by December 1st. Wait for the facts. Vote no. Let's take this opportunity. It's one of the best opportunities this town's ever had to face the facts. So let's face the facts. Vote no. Let's find out by December 1st. Probably when we'll have the next referendum, number 5. We'll probably know where we stand. And we'll probably be in deep quicksand. So that will focus people, and then instead of coming and asking us for this kind of thing, they'll face the facts and start to manage the town properly. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of handouts I'm going to be giving around the lake. This sign's going to go up in front of my house in a few more days. I had to wait until I got the date for the referendum, which is, as I showed you before, October 27th on a Saturday. So the first side of the flyer, these flyers are very inexpensive, so, I don't pay much money for them, and I hand them out, and I write them all up, and I do all that. So I get them reproduced and in town here in a print shop. And the first side is called Nope. Nope means no. Nope. Yet another bad budget. Don't be fooled by the proposed 0% increase. A lot of people say to me, Brian, we're downtown. We're in the depressed part. Our taxes are going to go down. And I said, yeah, they're going to go down but then you're going to get an added 21% on top of them. So you're going to be paying more for less. And that isn't good. So everybody's going to get hurt in this, the whole town, everybody. Some of them will pay a little less tax than they are now, but they'll also have their property will be half the value. So they'll be paying more tax for the value they have. Not good. A lot of people don't understand that point. That's why I'm belaboring it a bit tonight. You're all going to be hurt by this increase if it's large. If it's zero increase for reval, which is almost impossible in this economy, you won't get hurt. But then at least in the next referendum, number 5, we will know that. We'll know exactly where we stand. Now, there has been a rush to judgment. I'm talking outside of this now. There's been a rush to judgment lately by the 5 majority selectmen to get this thing going and get it moved. They got all kinds of reasons why they want to get referendum 4 passed. But I think the main reason, it's Brian's opinion, the main reason is because they don't want to have to deal with it in referendum 5 when they know all the facts, because then they're going to really have a rough problem on their hands. So getting back to the NOPE again, don't be fooled by the proposed 0% increase. It's the 21% we're concerned about. The 4th referendum for the fiscal year 12-13 town budget will be held on Saturday, October 21st, 2012, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Pearson Middle School. For the 4th time this year, the budget does not take into consideration or prepare for the possible large mill rate. Increase expected in the fiscal year 2013-14 budget recommendation next year. There's an increase expected. Some fiscal conservatives think that the increase may be as large as 21%. It could be less, it could be more. There are some rumors that it might be a little less, but nobody knows exactly what. For the average property owner, once the reval is complete, the new assessed value is determined and a 0 increase-decrease budget approved for fiscal year 2013-14. So I guess I said it a little wrong. It'll be 21% for a 0 increase-decrease budget. If the town needs more money for schools or for the town, it'll be more than that. It'll be whatever they need. It'll be on top of that. The reval initial results will be made known December 1 or so. Reval and initial results will be made known December 1 or so we'll find out soon. Let's wait. Let's turn this budget down until all the facts are known and hope that the recommendation for referendum number 5 takes this increase into consideration. It'll still be this year's mill rate, but we will have to put in the budget things that help make it a not so large a fall next year when we do our 13-14 budget. And I don't expect a couple of the selectmen there, matter of fact, 4 or 5 of them, to really understand this stuff, because they're not really business people. They don't have to go through all this all the time. We live this life in business. We live this life in our homes. But when you have 5 people more concerned about politics than you do about running the town financially properly, then you get into this kind of pickle we're in right now. This with the difference in opinions between the extremes. This referendum number 4 is premature in the opinion of many. Your vote counts. It's a privilege. Please use it. They should be thinking ahead, these selectmen, finance board. Wouldn't you, in your house or in your business? Vote absentee if necessary, but vote. Best to come to town and vote. Make a wise business decision. Wait for referendum number 5. Then you can consider whether you want to still vote no or you want to vote yes. Now, the other side of the flyer, you'll see on the screen, is called Experienced Businessmen, Concerned Parents, and Most Property Owners. Do not make good decisions, business decisions, without first obtaining all the facts. Experienced businessmen, concerned parents, and most property owners do not make good business decisions without first obtaining all of the facts. The town leaders, 5-2 on the finance board and board of selectmen, have been remiss in sending the voters a proposed 2012-2013 budget, the 4th one, that doesn't prepare us for the possible 21% more or less predicted reval increase that the average property owner will have to swallow when the reval comes into effect during the 2013-14 budgeting process. Such an increase will be with you for at least 5 years, and perhaps more, depends on what the next valuation says. It could get worse, could get better. To ease the pain Next year, we must plan in advance. Now. If not before now. We should have been planning a long time ago for this. Probably years ago. I mean, we've known about the recession since 2008. Give me a break. 2008. This is my opinion. This, in my opinion, is irresponsible budgeting and should not be allowed to happen in a responsible environment. This is irresponsible budgeting, in my opinion. The reval facts will be available by December 1 or so. Then and only then can we make the best decisions, or even reasonable decisions. We're making poor decisions right now. I'm voting no until a vision appraisal information is in, December 1st. Please vote absentee if necessary. Call the town clerk, 860-738-6963 for information. Brian O'Haron, 211 West Wakefield Boulevard, Winston, Connecticut, since 1974. Please vote. Now you're going to see our reval elephant, and I'm going to talk a bit about some of the problems we have here. And there are more taxes requested from the property owners. As we know, this majority, they want, not only did they want a 12-point-something increase in taxes, which they got whittled down to at the finance board to about 8.4%, and they went out and they lost that. Then they went for 4% or so, and they lost that. And then they went for 0% or whatever, and they lost that. We have them asking for those taxes, which altogether would really kill us if they all passed. Plus the 21%. Plus they want a new school. Let's say that's, I'm going to be conservative here, $30 million. The state will pay a good percentage of it, but we'll have to pay the rest, most likely. And they need $12 million or so bond issue for roads, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. So they're out there trying to figure out how to spend the money. Very little thought given to how to earn the money. It's a lot harder to earn the money than it is to say, let's get it from uncle, the taxpayers. Let's get it from mom and dad, the taxpayers. Let's get it from grandma, the taxpayers. That's easy. The only problem is uncle, mom and dad, and grandma don't have the money because we're in real tough financial shape, not only in Winston, but in Connecticut and in America. Times are tough, and it affects everyone. Everyone. People at the lake feel it too. People in Winchester feel it. People in town feel it. People everywhere feel it. So don't think there's anybody better off. They aren't better off. They all have serious issues to face when the economy is going the way it's going. They have to be concerned about their future, their retirement, jobs for their children and grandchildren. Schooling has gone up to $60,000 a year in a lot of schools, that kind of thing. And a lot of people aren't even bothering to go to the local schools, 2-year colleges, because they're afraid they won't be able to get a job afterwards, and they're really thinking about that hard. Everyone is feeling the pressure. Don't think you're the only one. Don't think just because you have kids in the school system, you're the only one facing the pressure. Everybody's facing the pressure, including you, if you own a home or own any property, or are paying for children to go to college, or trying to help them get through without having a $100,000 tab at the end. People are losing jobs everywhere. I see it all the time. Go into stores. You'll see one employee where there used to be 3. Go into the post office and you have to ring the bell. Go into the banks and you see 3 people as tellers instead of 6 or 5. Everywhere you go, you see that they're cutting back, and they'll tell you that. They're cutting back. Businesses are losing business. We had a few store or 2 close here since the last recession. We have a few that are going to open too. That's what I call business as usual. But it's tough. It's a tough time for businesses. And if the taxes go up by a bunch of 30% and we get a new school and we get the 12% million for the roads, then there won't be money to spend in these businesses. As it is now, even our leaders, a lot of them, they go to Torrington for things. They say it's too expensive here. I know of a case where somebody bought their insurance policy, switched from a local insurance man to somebody else because they were $100 cheaper. I know another case where somebody got insurance for their car and got it from the credit union instead of a local insurance man because they got it cheaper that way. I don't blame them for doing that. We got to get to the point where our businessmen can supply these services for the same sort of prices and costs that other people can do, and it's getting tougher and tougher to do that. Insurance companies are becoming more demanding now, things like that. Education costs are increasing, you know that. Going to college now, it costs a fortune. People get out there $100,000 unless they work their way through and take a long time to get through or have rich parents that can afford to help them. And that's getting harder and harder to do. If you got 3 kids. I had one person on the lake say to me, Brian, I'm a rich man, but I'm broke. And I said, why are you broke? He said, well, you know, I got 3 kids going to college at $60,000 apiece. And I'm having a hard time keeping both of my houses now. Now, it might not sound like much to you, but, you know, there's a person who worked all his life. He says he's got a lot of money, but he's broke. So, you know, one way or another, everybody is getting affected. We all know that the people who don't have jobs are hurting, but I'm trying to get across the message here to you that everybody's hurting. Even people who do have jobs are on retirement. They planned for a certain way of lifestyle, and that the rug's been pulled out from under them. They're trapped in a lot of respects, and have to change their lifestyle. People at all income levels are having to do without. Everybody's doing without. I don't know anybody who isn't doing without. Do you know anybody who's not doing without? People are now being forced to work together and share. That's what happens. That's what happened when I was a kid. Every week we borrowed 2 eggs from the neighbor, and they came and borrowed a loaf of bread from us, and then on payday we gave it back, and they gave it back to us, and the next week we did a similar thing with our other neighbors. And we picnicked together, and we partied together, and we didn't fight over an inch of land, and all that kind of thing. We were forced to work together. And it's a bit like an orchestra. Everybody has to work together, pull in the same direction. One instrument playing off key or a bad note is bad for everybody, but they also need a conductor. They need somebody to conduct them, and they do a lot of practicing before they come and actually do the musical. So we need to do the same, and right now we don't have that. We have a cacophony of sound. It's like Pierre Boulez, so to speak. And not too many people like the music of Boulez. Some do. I don't, but it's a cacophony of sound. It's tough all around for everybody. It was tough for all these people who started these factories and made the town happen. It's tough for everybody. We've managed to squeak by with little economic growth. The good that the town has to offer does not seem to be good enough to attract investors. We've got to get to the point where we're good enough to attract investors. We also don't want all the people that are here at the higher end of the tax brackets leaving and selling their house for half price, because then we will get less tax money in 5 years when they revalue all the properties. The BOE, Board of Education, refuses to cooperate with the Finance Board. That's ridiculous. Don't even want to talk about it. It's so ridiculous, I don't want to talk about it. Robert's Rules of Order are being used to quiet the minority on the Board of Selectmen. You saw that. Just watch the reruns of the Selectmen meeting. We should be letting people have their say, like Ralph Nader says. Let everybody talk. Let everybody get their 2 cents in. Let's not be cutting them off with tricks and sneakiness with Robert's Rules of Order, even if it might be legal. It's not the really way to do it. You wouldn't do that with your child. You wouldn't do that with family members. You wouldn't do that with friends. You don't want to do it with taxpayers either, and other political parties. DVDs of the selectmen meetings, for one reason or another, have not been available. Some think maybe they've been unreasonably withheld. Well, we get around that by getting the CDs, put them on the website so people all over the country that are only here in the summer can see them, see what's going on. They don't like what they see, they tell me that. And that's one of the reasons why they're not voting yes on the taxes. A rush to judgment on the budget. This whole rush to judgment here is going on right now without finding out the facts on the reval and without putting some money in to invest into the town and without having some plans to run the schools more efficiently. That's not sane, really. No good businessman or good family leader would do that. Silence on the preliminary reval results. That's awful. As soon as anybody in town hall has a rough idea, they can say it's a rough idea, they can stamp rough idea all over the papers, but they should get it out in the open. They should say, look, here's what we're really dealing with now, and stop the bluffing that's going on. Stop the undercurrent of let's get this budget approved before we know all the facts. Stop that. And concentrate more on getting the information out to everybody. There are no detailed school budgets available, or at least weren't right up to the last minute of the, it's against the charter, some of the stuff they're doing. You got to have a pretty liberal interpretation of the charter, but we shouldn't be doing that. We should be making sure everybody has all the information they need well in advance, as the charter says, before we have a town meeting or a referendum or anything like that. And the town budget came in at the last minute, 10 hours before the town budget meeting. Not a sane thing to do, even though it might turn out to be legal. It's not really a good business practice, and you shouldn't be doing that. Audits aren't complete. We still got a year or two of incomplete audits. I mean, maybe the last year is justified a little bit, but the one before that, no thank you. We should have that. That should have been done before the town meeting. Should have been done a year ago, maybe. There's a lot of playing that goes on to the press. Selectman Perez does it all the time. The mayor does it a lot. And you feel like they're not talking to the taxpayers or the people in the meeting or the other people on the Selectmen and Finance Board. They're talking to the press all the time, nobbling the press, trying to get their political views across. When actually, in my view, we should have probably one spokesman for the press that gives a balanced view of everything. You know, they all come and sit in the meetings and they can hear whatever they want to hear. But we, as a team, business team, should not be taking advantage of that for political stuff. The Finance Board shouldn't be political. It's not in Torrington. It's not in other towns. It is here for some reason, probably because of the nature of our place. So understand that the possible 21% tax increase due to the mill rate evaluation increase is for next year, fiscal 13-14. We should be preparing for that now. We should be getting into the budget this year things that we need to prepare for that, so that we don't have to say next year, well, it takes a year to close the school. Well, it takes a year to change the deals with the unions. Well, it takes 2 years to do this. We don't want that. So I'm going to display the sign again, then we'll play, once again, the Elephant Walk, which I got a little different version of this week than I had the last time. So there you go. There's the sign. If the reval is going to be good news, we'd probably know by now. The fact that things are kept quiet and you don't know, and we won't know till December 1, that's all a lot of baloney. We will know. People in town hall will know. They can say it's unofficial. They can say it's preliminary. They can say it's premature. They can say it might get a little worse or a little better. But to a manager like myself, businessman, manager, family man, we want all the facts on the table. And we always assume that if we can't get the truth, we can't get the facts, that they're probably going to be bad, not good. And we'd be very surprised if they are good. And if the reval is going to be good news, we probably know by now. Vote no again. Initial reval facts should come by December 1. Wait for the facts. And if you forget this, go by my house in the next few days and you'll see a sign up there which says the same thing. Thank you very much. Let's hope I don't have to do this for 10 referendums. Let's get this one down and let's get a good one put together, helped by the reval statistics for number 5. Thank you very much.